Good evening and welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Common Council of the City of Hartford. All proper notices were sent. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask if you'd please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call.
The mayor and all alderpersons are present except Alderperson Webb, who is attending via Zoom.
Oh, via Zoom. Everybody wave. Hi, Justin. Okay, let's see. The roll call, we do have mayor's appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. The last appointment will be the member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I will be the city liaison, and would look for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Doug, second by Joe Phillip.
Motion by Alderperson Carroll, seconded by Alderperson Kohler, approving the appointment of Tim Mahalik as city liaison for the Chamber of Commerce.
I think it was Alderperson Phillip. The second was Alderperson
Seconded?
Phillip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. No worries. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Oh, that's right.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Communications.
So we have the common council minutes of April 11th.
Could I ask you to move your mic just a little closer? There you go.
Unanimous consent agenda.
Actually, unanimous consent agenda first?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to see if she was paying attention. Come on.
She did. She
She's
read
new.
right off
You've got
to
to do that,
she was
right,
going
okay.
Wait, so who's new here?
Yeah.
She did well.
I thought she did
followed
well.
mine. You're not.
Gotta make sure she's watching. Okay, we have before us a unanimous consent agenda for approval.
Sure.
President Rusniak,
Why not? Why not?
second by Alderperson Garza.
Guess they're sleeping over there.
So motion by Alderperson Rusniak, seconded by Alderperson Garza, approving the common council minutes of April 11th, 2023 and April 18th, 2023.
Any discussion, corrections, additions, subtractions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have communications.
So we have the Mid-Moraine meeting on Wednesday, May 24th. It's going to be at the Newburgh Community Center. And the deadline for reservations is Friday, May 19th. So if you would like to attend, can you please let me know by May 18th?
Thank you.
Just for the new members of the council, the Mid-Moraine organization is a group of two counties, Ozaki County and
Yes,
Washington
right,
County.
correct.
Communities. It's primarily elected officials, but also some administration staff. And you are invited to go. We pay for your meal if there's a meal involved. And they have, I think, 6 meals throughout the year in different months. But they also have a different meeting, which is the executive committee meeting, and that meets every month also, but that's over at the Jackson Village Hall. There is no meal with that one. But if you would like to go to those, feel free to let Shannon know, and she'll sign you up, and then you can usually touch base with the other aldermen to see who's also going, and you carpool over there.
Steve, it's a meal and a guest speaker at every
And
meeting.
a guest speaker, yes.
This month will be State Senator Dewey Strobel. He will be the guest speaker.
Ooh,
Yeah, ooh.
I got something that night.
Yeah, I'll be busy. That's funny. Appearances and citizen comments, item number 7. We do have first a transient merchant's license to conduct free roof inspections for BRH Enterprises, correct? Do we have? Oh, okay. Going to come up, just state your name, your business, and kind of just a brief thing of.
Yeah, my name is Ben Medell. I'm the sales coordinator over at BRH Enterprises. We're a family-owned roofing company based in Mayville, so just a few miles up the road. Talking about the storm that went through here on the 19th, we've got lots of calls from Jackson, Slinger, and east side of Hartford for hail damage on the roofs. And since we've had so many calls, We'd like to have a representative go around the community and knock doors and offer free inspections to see if the rest of the community was impacted as well.
Super. Thank you. And then,
You can stop by tomorrow and pick up your permit.
Permit? Okay, thank you.
okay, anytime after, what? Noon. 8 o'clock? Afternoon, okay, thank you. Wonderful, thank you very much. And we also have Mike Peters, our friend Mike Peters from WPPI. This is your 3 minutes of fame. Let's come up to the podium and we have our Director of Utilities, Brian Rhodes, playing in the role of Vanna White.
No resemblance.
Very much.
Mike, you don't have a thumb drive, do you?
I do not.
I mean, I can put it up for you. but that's-
Oh, 6 more than 3 minutes worth here.
Oh, you're,
Mayor, members of the council, with 3 minutes, maybe I just ask you if you have any questions. You've got a copy of the presentation. It's probably 15 minutes long, give or take, depending on your questions, but happy to answer any questions that you have. You know, Hartford was one of our founding members. WPPI was started in 1980, and you and 22 other Wisconsin municipals came together to form WPPI, which really gives you the economy of the scale to have ownership in bigger assets, be able to enter into larger power supply contracts. And one of the questions you might ask yourself is, why does that matter to you? Why should we care about WPPI? 80% of your customer's electric bill is WPPI's power cost and related expenses. So we're a big part of your community when you look at the electric bills that your customers in the city pays, and that's really why your membership in WPPI is so important to us and to the city. We are a member-led organization, and I really want to thank you for allowing Brian to sit on our executive committee. We have a 51-member board of directors that meets about 3 times a year. But the executive committee, which is elected from the board, meets every month, sometimes a couple of days a month. It spends a lot of time, as you do as city council, overseeing the operations of WPPI. And Brian, we recruited him for multiple years before he finally agreed to serve, and we're really happy that he's on the executive committee. He brings a lot of experience from his positions at Hartford that really adds to the conversation at our leadership table. So I appreciate that. You also have Mike Tim, who heads up our distribution services group. So Hartford has, you know, a history of being actively involved with WPPI, and we appreciate when our members step up and do that. If you look at our mission and vision, the first thing that should stand out is we put members first. It is about the membership. It's not about WPPI. You are the utility. We're here to support you, to help you be the best municipal utility you possibly can be through services, power supply, et cetera. But it is about the membership and the utility, and we're in the back supporting you in whatever ways we can. We focus on 3 areas, power supply being the biggest part of it, services being really what you probably interact more with WPPI is on the services side. You get a power bill once a month, but you interact on the services side almost every day, whether it's a billing issue, a rate issue, energy service manager being in the city, meter tech helping out with meter installations, that type of thing. So the services side is really where we have a lot of involvement with our member communities. And then advocacy. We were born in politics. Legislation had to be passed to allow WPPI to even be created. And so we have a history of being actively involved from a legislative standpoint, both at the state and national levels. On that next slide, slide 3, we are an organization that likes to plan, as any utility would. We're constantly looking downfield to see what we need to be engaged with. In the power supply area, we look out 10, 15, 20, 30 years. As a business plan, we look out typically a 5-year window, and then each year we take a look at what we need to accomplish that year in order to, you know, move that 5-year business plan forward. One area that we're focusing is our long-term resource planning. We're in a pretty good position from our resource needs. We don't have a lot of open space or need to add new assets or long-term contracts until about 27, 28, 29. We have 4 large wind contracts that are rolling off, and I can tell you, we're looking forward to those rolling off. I think WPPI got a little bit ahead on getting into renewable energy. Those contracts now we can replace at substantially lower costs to our membership, and so we will definitely be looking forward to those contracts rolling off. But it puts us in a position, we have to plan long-term for asset additions or long-term contract additions. And so we are revamping how we do our planning, and this gives us some opportunities to do that. Member interconnection for solar. 5 years ago, across our entire membership, we had 300 PV systems, rooftop solar on customers. Today, we're over 1,300 just in that 5-year period, and it's constantly it's a constant barrage. It takes your staff time to talk to customers, and if a customer moves forward with a project, it takes staff time, both on your end and our end, to manage that interconnection process. So we wanted to work with our members. We stood up a work group, typical for WPPI, bring members together, look at what best practices are, and then establish a manual that says, here are best practices for interconnecting residential and business PV systems, solar systems. We're hoping to now, the next step would be to automate that and put it online, so that it would even be less labor intensive for your employees and for WPPI staff, as we're going to constantly see an increase in these systems.
Mike, just a quick question. Of the 1,300 that you've added with, do you know how many are in Hartford? Are there any in Hartford?
He'd be the best one to know. Probably about 10.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say, amongst our communities, Plymouth has seen a lot, but there's a developer that lives in Plymouth and has been pushing it. So it's somewhat spread out amongst our systems. I don't know if there's any one that has a huge concentration. Oconomowoc has had a lot of new activity in solar. They probably have over 30 to 40 systems. And so it's just, it went from 300, we were adding 15, 20 a year for a while, and then it just started to take off. So it's becoming more of a labor issue. And from our standpoint, we are working with the Public Service Commission. Our biggest concern is to make sure the rates are appropriate, so that your customers who don't have solar are not subsidizing those that do.
Okay.
And so if we can get the distribution rates appropriately set, from a power supply standpoint, we can absorb the added solar. We just don't want our member systems to be left with that subsidy between those that don't have solar and those that do. So that's an issue that we're definitely focusing on. And then organizational staff development. We, between myself and 5 direct reports, we figured out the other day we have 200 years of service, which just means we're old and have been around a long time. And we know that there's going to start to be turnover at WPPI in the coming years. And so we want to make sure that we have staff that are, have the experience and are able to step up and take over those leadership positions in the coming year. Probably the issue that most of our members are, it's top of mind, is what our power costs are. If you look on slide 4, I believe it is, we were doing pretty well until 2021. We started to see natural gas prices take a pretty large leap forward. They went up significantly, and by 2022, gas prices and market energy prices, which are tied to natural gas prices, were about 100% above what we had anticipated, double from what we anticipated. Fortunately, our rate wasn't double. We were about 10% above budget. So our resource mix helped mitigate that impact, what it could be otherwise. But so when we went into 2023, we started the year off, we budgeted for about what we expected in 22, and we're 10% below budget now. Gas prices tanked in January, and we're seeing a slight benefit from that. So fortunately, our prices have come back down. We're about 10% below what we had budgeted for 2023 because of natural gas prices coming back down. We have a very diverse portfolio. If you look at the next slide, we have reduced our dependence on coal. That's because we've been able to reduce our contracts that we've had with investor-owned utilities, and so that's reduced the amount of coal that we have in our portfolio. Frankly, the 3 things that drive our resource decision, first and foremost, is economics. Is it a cost-effective resource compared to any other option? Second is reliable. Is it a reliable power supply option that's going to be there when we need it? There's been instances you've probably seen in the news, Texas a few years ago, when they've had, blackouts over extended periods of time because the resource that they counted on didn't operate. We've had that a few times in our history, but not very often. And then the third is environmental responsibility. It still makes sense if you can transition away from fossil fuels and do it cost effectively, we're going to take advantage of those opportunities. Our last two resources that we added, one was wind, one was solar. And those we selected based on competitive RFPs. We went out, we needed a resource, we did an RFP, and we compared it against other options, natural gas being part of that option. And these two options were lower cost. And so we went with those options. So it's sort of a win-win. Lower cost, environmental sustainability, so that was a positive. But I can assure you, as we make decisions going into the future, economics will always be at the top of mind as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, quick question here. I just read through this whole thing on this
Yeah.
slide, and you're using an acronym, and I don't see a definition for it.
In that acronym, I'm sorry.
REC?
What's that? The REC?
Yeah, what's a REC?
Renewable energy certificates. And so for every megawatt hour of renewable generation that you generate, you get one renewable certificate. And that certificate can be monetized. You can sell it to somebody who wants more renewables. Wisconsin has a roughly 10% RPS, renewable portfolio standard, so you have to have at least 10% of your energy coming from renewable resources, and so we use our renewable assets to meet that requirement. Anything above that, and you can see that renewables, no RECs.
Right.
That means what we did is we took those certificates and we sold them, and that money helps reduce our rates. It doesn't change the nature of the power, it just strips the renewable attributes and we sell it.
And that's wonderful. Just a suggestion, if you're going to use an acronym, let us know what it is.
I apologize, and thanks for that, because this is the first of 51 presentations we'll be doing, and you are the guinea pig. And so when I go back tomorrow, I'll let staff know, here's some tweaks that we need to do. So I appreciate hearing that.
You bet.
Yeah, so that next slide just shows you the diversity in our resource mix. You can see we're spread out, which is good from a geographic standpoint. We have a diverse mix of fuel in our resource from solar, nuclear, coal, natural gas, and so a good resource mix. And so that diversity gives us stability. We'll likely never be the absolute lowest cost option, but we'll never be the highest cost option. We're always going to be a very competitive power supply option for our member communities. And that's because of that resource mix, that when market energy prices were up 100%, our rates only went up 10%. And we are, right now, when we do a comparison of other utilities, wholesale power supply options, WPPI is the lowest option for municipal utilities. And we've come down over the last number of years to get back to where I think we need to be. I did talk about environmental responsibility. Our portfolio, just because of market forces, is transitioning. We own 3 coal generation, two resources with 3 generators. Elm Road is the newest resource. It's a fantastic coal-fired generation plant just south of Milwaukee at Oak Creek. And WEPCO is the primary owner of that resource, and they've already publicly announced they're going to transition that from coal to natural gas. And so it'll begin burning natural gas. It does burn some now, but by 2030, they hope to be able to burn 100% natural gas. That's going to change the nature of that plant. We don't know if that's a good thing or not. We would prefer that it continue to burn coal. We think it's a great resource for us. It is a low-cost resource long-term. We're doing analysis on what would the conversion to natural gas, how would that plant operate? Would it be economical? What would it do to our resource mix? What would it do for our economics? And we'll have to make some decisions. One, do we have an option to walk away from it or not? And if we do, what other options will we take a look at? So our portfolio is transitioning regardless of steps that we're taking. We are, just like every utility across pretty much the U.S., is targeting a net zero by 2050. Realistically, we think most utilities can get to about 80%. That last 20 is going to be a challenge. There is not a really sound strategy as of today that would get you there to get to 100% that would be economical. And again, what drives our decisions? Economics, We look at what's the most cost-effective resource, reliability. We never want to be the source of a blackout in Wisconsin because our resources weren't online and weren't generating. So, but we do see some benefit in moving that direction with our portfolio. Another thing we always look for is ways to save money. We were actually able to refinance some debt. We refinanced $112 million worth of bonds. We pulled the trigger just last year. We closed on it this April. Overall, 2.97% rate, which reduces our annual debt service cost by $1.7 million. And again, we flow that back down to our member utilities, and you flow that back down to your customers. So anything we can do to reduce cost to members is always at the forefront of our thinking. And so really from our standpoint, we're at a really good spot. We've got a good resource mix. We've got long-term stability. We do have some opportunities coming up in the not too distant future to reduce our cost even more as we roll out of some higher cost contracts and hopefully replace them with lower cost options. So again, I do appreciate your allowing Brian to be on our executive committee. He's a great resource for us.
You haven't got our bill yet, but okay.
Well, you know, we do feed them lunch every month, so we got that going for them. But we do appreciate the connection and the partnership we've had with Hartford from day one. You've been a supporter and a member of our organization, so I do appreciate that. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, open it up for any questions for Mike from WPPI, if anybody has it. I just wanted to hazard a guess, if we only have 10 people doing solar at 1,300, is the number one community Sun Prairie?
No,
It was a joke, but okay.
Sun Prairie, you know, maybe, I mean, I could see where you'd go there, but, yeah. There's a few that have, 30 or 40. It's just spread out. There's not really one big concentration, but we just seen this constant uptick. We went from less than 5 megawatts total connected. We're up to 15 now. It's starting to be sort of it is a generation resource in the mix, but we have no control over it.
Right.
And from our standpoint, it goes back to, we want to take the subsidy out at the distribution rate level so that you guys, if we get to that point, you shouldn't care whether a customer wants to put solar on the roof. That's up to them.
Right.
But your other customers shouldn't have to pick up at more cost because of it. And so that's an issue that we're working with the commission to try and get addressed.
Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
There's a huge solar farm got built on the south edge of Watoma. Is Watoma one of your members?
No,
They're not.
they are not. No.
Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes, go ahead. Alderperson
Fuel
Fuller.
mix from 2010 to 2022, how much more energy are we using in that space? And
Probably.
how is this organization geared for the expansion of more energy usage? Do we have capacity, or do we need to grow in other areas to be able to satisfy our usage?
From an energy standpoint, from 2010 to 2022, we're probably 1 or 2% higher. Our growth on an annualized basis is less than 0.5% per year.
Wisconsin
In
is a
some
growing
years,
population.
it's like 0.2%. We have had very little growth. We are and we are monitoring everything with, electric vehicles coming into the system. It is still less than 1% of the vehicles in Wisconsin, 2%. There's not a lot of EVs out there. You might see occasional, but they're not a big issue yet. We actually worked with an engineering consulting firm to develop a model that can help us project where EVs will start to show up more frequently. Frankly, if we can have good off-peak rates, that could be a really nice load for us and help reduce cost for everybody. Heating is still predominantly natural gas, some propane. Electric heat is not a big issue yet. That's probably 2030s and later where you'll see more heat pumps that'll start being, brought into the system. That's why, from a planning standpoint, we're going to factor in all of those projections. When will we need more generation capacity? When will we need more, energy resource mix? And but it's probably mid to late 2030s before we start really seeing an impact from
Maybe I didn't
increased.
ask my question well enough. Are you saying that we're not consuming as much
Our loads have been flat. We haven't seen a
flat
huge.
from 2010?
I'd say from 2010 to 22, I don't think we're up more than 1 or 2%.
And is that because of the efficiency of the electronics
That's a
we're
big part of
using
it.
and those types of
It's
things?
a big part of it. Try to buy an inefficient refrigerator
Yeah,
today.
okay.
Those are assets that take a long time to turn over. You know, you don't go replace your refrigerator every couple years, but those kind of, you know, you look at a refrigerator 25 years ago compared to a refrigerator today, and it's using a quarter of the energy. Same
Yeah.
with air conditioning systems, so much more efficient.
I just recall the laws of people making appliances and things like that, where quiescent currents and other things that draw naturally on it have to be reduced or controlled, and it seems like this clearly shows that initiative is real and it
It's
worked.
real. It has an impact. It has an impact. You think about the electronics, even, you know, TVs, you look at those yellow stickers on brand-new TVs, you know, they lose, you know, TV like that might use $15 worth of electricity over a year.
Yeah, okay.
And 20 years ago, that would have been a couple $100. So efficiencies have worked their way into the system. It doesn't happen overnight, but over a 10-year period, we've seen it. It's really held down our growth. That's a challenge for us because utilities typically growth, when you have inflationary pressures across the board on everything, if you don't have growth, your rates are going to naturally tend to go up. We've been able to hold the costs pretty much. We actually saw our rates go down. I think we're lower than we were in 2010, but I'd have to verify that. We're pretty close to where we were at in 2010, even with this uptick.
And just to follow up, then are you committed with the natural gas? Because that seems to be a commodity that is fluctuating based on where we are with global economics versus coal.
We would stay with coal if we had it as an option. The three coal resources we've had, we're minority owners, and WEPCO's already said they're going to move it to natural gas. We don't have a choice. It's going to natural gas. We also own 20% of a coal project in Minnesota. We've had it since the late 80s. Minnesota Power owns 80% and they operate the plant. They've already publicly announced they're going to go away from coal by 2035. So it's not our decision. So it's going to gas. We're going to look at it and say, is this the best gas resource? We need natural gas. We need to be able to dispatch resources because there are times when wind doesn't blow. We know sun doesn't shine all the time. And so you need dispatchable resources. Point Beach Nuclear is a fantastic resource. The owner of that resource, NextEra, is in the process of getting it relicensed. The license right now is up in 2030 and 2033. There's 2 units there. We buy a little bit more than 10% of our mix out of there. And so it's a great resource for us. We'd like for them to relicense it, and we'd like to be able to continue to buy from that plant too.
And, sorry, Mayor,
No,
and
go
the
ahead.
industry has no appetite for future nuclear?
For future nuclear? Actually, there is. We were looking at what's called small modular reactors, which is something that can be manufactured in a facility and then brought on site. And it's like these batteries that just get stacked up. The economics aren't there yet. The technology seems to be proven, but there's a joint action agency in Utah called UAMPS. They're doing serial number 1 project in the U.S., and we will never do serial number 1 of anything. We'd like to be serial number 10. Let's see this thing work, and then take a look at it. We were talking with Dairyland Power and a number of other utilities in Wisconsin. All the investor-owned utilities were looking at that same technology. We just felt that it wasn't quite there from an economic standpoint. When we ran the numbers, it just wasn't a resource we would add to the mix right now, and we don't have to. So we'll keep watching it.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, Steve, please.
Well, 2 things. One is we talked about the fact of the cost or our usage of electricity is being relatively flat over the last 10 years. One of the reasons, of course, is the work that WPPI does by reaching out to some of our biggest users, which is our industrial businesses, and we actually have a consultant that goes out and works with them to try to reduce their overall usage and also their peak usage times.
Correct.
But that's my plug. But the second part of this is, with all the big push to have electric cars, is there the infrastructure in place to have plug-ins at every house?
No. I think the first challenge you'll see is on the distribution systems, because, if you put typical distribution circuit and tie in back into the substation, and right now it's not sized to take on 15 EVs that are all going to charge at the same time. So I think the big impact will be at the distribution system. And again, we put a group together and worked with an engineering firm on what is building a system for the future. What should it look like? So if you're putting in a new subdivision, should you build it for today when you're putting in 30, 40 years assets? Or should you think ahead and say, you know what, we should maybe make it so we can convert it to larger conductor, maybe larger transformers? Typical places, you probably have most places, two to four houses connect to one 25 kVA transformer. That's not going to work if every one of those houses has two EVs. It won't be sufficient. So we're going to see that. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be this constant, we're really early in that adoption stage for EVs. And I think you're looking at, 20, 30, 35 before you start to see it uptick. So you'll have time to plan for it. It won't happen overnight, but it's going to happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions? Mike, always a pleasure.
And thank you, Mayor. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Hope to see you at our annual meeting this year. All right. Thank
I'll
you,
be there with
everybody.
bells on.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the mayor's report. I did want to let the folks know that I actually did attend the Joint Finance Committee, that's the State Joint Finance Committee, and talking about shared revenue. I actually testified there. I did it along, interestingly enough, with Cavalier Johnson, who was also one of the people who testified, and it's always interesting, I say, when you have somebody coming from the bluest of the blue counties, saying that he needs some additional help, and you have somebody coming from the reddest of the red county saying the same thing, you've got to know that there's a real balance and that the state legislature should actually look at this. The numbers I used, just to give you an idea of what Hartford has gone through, in 1997, because shared revenue from the state has been going on for some time, we had about 8,900 souls and got $1.5 million in shared revenue. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. In today's world, we have about 16,800 souls right in there, and I believe the last check we got for shared revenue was right around $717,000. So if you can do some quick math on the back of a napkin, you'll realize that our population almost doubled and our dollar amount was cut by more than half. Well, that's an interesting thing with inflation, the way it's going, and our expenses, unfortunately, were not covered, or cut it in half. When you see that, plus a 1997 dollar is only worth about 51% of what a 2023 dollar is worth. So we doubled in population, we get half the money, and then the money is worth half as much as it was in 1997. And then we're told by certain talk show hosts and conservative radio, and I tend to be a consumer of that particular product, tell us that, we're not upright in always whining about trying to get more money. Well, I actually called one of those shows, and they actually allowed me to spill these numbers out to give everybody an understanding of what's happening. We have a $7 billion surplus, that's with a B, billion-dollar surplus in the state of Wisconsin. They call it a surplus, and I've always referred to these things as we taxed you too much, but we're not giving it back fund. Okay, well, they have one of those, and I'm very interested in making sure that shared revenue does get adjusted. Now, at least the preliminary numbers, which were very kindly shared by our State Representative Ty Bowden, who's on our side on this issue, so thank you very much, Ty. When you look at what we're actually going to see as an increase, we're going to go up to about a $1,094,000, which is nice. I mean, it's hardly what I would call a sharp stick in the eye, but we're still not close to what we were doing in 1997. And when you look, we're going to get about a 53.6% increase in shared revenue. Now, that sounds like a big number, but when you realize what they've taken away over the years, it's not a big number. In fact, it's not big enough. Poor West Bend is only getting 42.3%. Now, we are actually the only cities in the state in Washington County. And when you realize that because we're cities, what do we have? Well, over 50% of our budget goes to police. Okay, we have the issue of having more roads. Why? Because we're a city. We have a lot more roads than a town. Now, some of the towns, like Addison's getting a 203% increase. Good for them, but holy moly, I'd love to get a 203% increase. The town of Hartford, 186.3% increase. Again, not as money, but as a percentage, they don't have anywhere near the roads. And one of the things, of course, that shared revenue can really help us with is an expense that we are increasing in the city of Hartford, and that is not only EMT, but paramedics. Paramedics are full-time. They're not inexpensive. We are doing what we can to make sure that we are providing the best emergency services possible. And the state not only has been handicapping us with shared revenue year after year after year, but then they also have expenditure restraints and levy limits. So not that I am lining up to raise taxes. We've been very blessed in the fact that Hartford has been growing these years. But when you look at what's been happening with the way that the money is handled, I mean, one of the things I wish the state legislatures would understand is that all of the money, all of the taxes comes out of a taxpayer pocket. It doesn't matter who's taxing you. What matters is the fact that you want to make sure that that money is going and equitably spread to service the needs of the constituents. And our needs happen to be something that everybody understands, and that's good roads and safety when it comes to paramedics. Those are the things we want to fund. I urge you to contact the Speaker Voss and your state legislators and let them know that we want a more equitable funding and go back to that 1997 level when they started cutting and cutting and cutting every year, and give us the shared revenue that we need in order to provide those things without raising taxes. That's the big thing. It's a little hypocritical for the Republicans, and I'm picking on them right now, but to say, oh, we're cutting taxes. No, they're not. They're taking it away from us, and then we're supposed to try and make do with a lot less. That's not equitable. We need to make sure that we're getting the funding necessary, especially with a $7 billion we taxed you too much and we're not giving it back to you fund. We need to make sure that that is set up and then put in a permanent change, not the 1 year, but that we iron it out so we're getting the money necessary to make sure we're not raising your property taxes and we are providing the services that you expect. Thank you. Okay, with that, we have aldermanic requests. President Rusniak.
Okay, Steve and Alderperson Fulop, at the next Public Works meeting, I have an agenda request. Tina Savage, myself, and Justin Webb have been involved in a alley problem on the east side of Grand Avenue between Luce and Maple. There's a section of very bad alley. John Griffin's aware of it, Daryl's been out there, Steve's been out there. So let's put this on your agenda for the next Public Works meeting in 2 weeks. I have a petition from 30 residents that will be presented that night, and we'll have a little discussion on it. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderperson Carroll.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Alderperson Reagan.
Nothing.
Alderperson Garza.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Alderperson Turchy.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Alderperson Savage.
Nothing right now.
Alderperson Kohler.
Nothing tonight.
Alderperson Fulop.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Alderperson Webb.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. And I bet you guys thought I was going to forget. Yeah. No, I didn't. Okay, super.
See that note that I slipped your word?
Arf, 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 arf. Okay, with that standing committee reports, we have nothing with Public Works and Utilities, no resolutions, no ordinances, first or second reading, so we skip right to the city administrator's report. And with that, we go to our city administrator, Steve Volker.
All right, the first item on the agenda is the review and consideration of the MOA with Washington County for the next generation housing. Our city attorney, Ian Proust, is here because Ian was very instrumental in drafting the MOA. And I believe it was beneficial to us because it helps to support what the council has said at the last meeting in which we talked about next generation housing to protect us for future movement in this process, and making sure that, again, we do have off-ramps on this project if something would go wrong, and yet it would not come back to haunt the city. So I'll let Ian kind of take the lead on this.
Yep, so for clarity, the agreement was drafted by Washington County. I worked with them to fine tune it to make sure the city's concerns were addressed within it. Most of it is laying out the framework that's been discussed in the past. So it's the general framework of the project. It's the requirements for the builders that have been adopted by the NGH committee. There's the language in there regarding the lien for the ultimate payments. So this is the lien that would be placed on the properties that would be paid back to essentially replenish the NGH fund for the county. The big thing, and it addresses, again, the brokerage fees, all of those details. The big thing that I want to point out, because I think this is the biggest piece of the puzzle for the city, is paragraph 6 of that agreement. So it basically says that any funds that are dispersed for the NGH project will be administered under the county's grant policy and through their grant reporting system. That's fine. We have to jump through the hoops for the money that they want for reporting purposes. But the key here is the county agrees that it will not seek to recoup funds from a Next Generation Housing Coalition partner, except that if we don't spend the funds, we have to return them within 90 days. So, which, again, makes total sense. If we didn't spend the funds for what they were intended, we would return those funds. The key there is exactly what Steve mentioned, which is there's off-ramps. So the intent here is at each step of the way, when the county reviews funding requests, they're gonna review this at the NGH level, and as part of the approval, they're gonna say, yep, the proposal you have fits within our NGH framework. This is something that needs to happen for the NGH project. We are approving that expenditure. At that point, the city can move forward, and we know that, you know, if 6 months from now, the economy changes, interest rates affect the ability to do this, we can't find builders to, you know, work within the framework that we want. The cost of construction for the infrastructure are astronomical for whatever reason and far exceed what we had expected. There's all of these unknowns. I mean, that's the biggest problem with this. This is kind of breaking some new ground. There's a lot of unknowns as to how this is going to work. This allows us to adapt to those unknowns without penalizing the city. This isn't the city saying, or this isn't the county saying, yep, you approved this, now you're stuck with it, or repay us. There is an off-ramp if the city is unable to, for whatever whatever reason out there, this program ultimately doesn't work. Obviously, that would be something that would be communicated with the NGH, you know, committee. We would try and see what needs to adapt. You know, maybe it's the threshold for what the houses would be sold for. Maybe it's a style of houses that are being, you know, developed, et cetera. But we would have flexibility within that to make sure it would be in place. And then I would anticipate when the large expenditure comes, assuming you get to that point and we move forward with the actual infrastructure project and the county writes the much, much, much larger check for the infrastructure project. At that stage, we're now going to be placing the liens on all the properties because we'll be having them divided into parcels. You know, that's when the real teeth of the agreement are going to go. But again, that is not something that gets recouped from the city. Once those monies are dispersed, those go as liens onto the properties ultimately. But if they sit out there for whatever time period, when they sell, the county gets their recoup, they get the funds at that time. So it's structured to make sure that the city can feel safe in taking the steps along the way without worrying that this is gonna come back to bite us in the butt with you know, based on what the unknowns are out there. The other clarification we had in here was just that, as they stand right now, the building requirements apply to single-family and duplex-style homes. We're anticipating some triplexes, we're anticipating some townhome-style development. You know, those are gonna be, because those are different than what has been discussed, those are gonna be slightly, obviously, we want quality standards there, but it's not specifically under the NGH quality standards as they're adopted today.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve, go
Do you have
ahead.
anything else?
Nope.
Since this agreement also includes the Hartford Area Development Corporation, Tom is here if you have any, Tom, if you'd like to comment on it?
State your name and address, you get 3 minutes.
Tom Hosted at Hartford Area Development Corporation. Boy, you threw me for a loop there. am now city resident, 1538 Robbins Circle. Certainly, we support the proposed memorandum of agreement. We've worked closely with Steve and the Hartford staff, as well as Ian, and on his advice, we are ready to move forward and have our signature on the agreement. You know that the engineering work is under study right now by R.A. Smith, and soon there will be quotes or bids let for the engineering work, and that'll be brought back to the council for review. So as Steve and Ian have pointed out, there are off-ramps review points along the way that will give us all an opportunity to make our opinions known and act on moving forward.
Thank you.
Just one thing too is Deb from Washington County is here also if you have any questions for her, but if not, I will take any questions.
And I can address
Oh,
one.
and Ian's
So,
got more.
Yep, I do have one other thing. So I had discussed one of the questions with Alderman Fulop earlier today regarding what is the council's next step where they will basically have input on this. What is the next point where we're going to be coming back and saying, here's our benchmark for where we're at? And I had discussed kind of the timelines with our city engineer. The plan is, assuming if this moves forward, the plan is that the initial engineering work for both the subdivision plat and some of the initial engineering work for the roads is going to get started. That's R.A. Smith. I apologize, Alderperson Fulop, I didn't know the name of the contractor when we were discussing earlier today. Plan is to actually go out for initial proposals for the developer for the lots early in that process, so possibly even July, because we want somebody on board to work with that process to make sure that the single-family lots we're proposing fit within the guidelines that a developer is willing to work within. So we don't want to get all the way to the end and say, hey, here's our plat proposal, and go out to bid and have the developers say, well, no, because of this, this, and this, we can't work within this. So the intent is actually to come back in just a few months with preliminary proposals from developers showing that this is functional, and, start working towards concrete agreements with them at that point.
Any questions? Alderperson Turgey.
Just clarification on developer. I thought when we had conversations earlier, we are the developer, the
We are.
city is.
Builder, developer, the person who's gonna build the lots,
Yeah, but that's a very distinct,
correct. I apologize,
Clarifications.
I'm used to referring to them as the developers. The builder who we would be entering into the contract with to build out all of the lots, for the single families.
all right, thank you.
Alderperson Rosniak.
I was extremely pleased to hear that we have 9 builders that are expressing interest in this project. That alone is a very positive sign that 9 builders are looking at this.
Alderperson Kohler.
Yeah, so when we asked for this memorandum and we moved forward, it was under my understanding that, and it does state right in the executive summary, that the county was paying for the engineering study. And we asked for that engineering study to be done in 2 different ways. One, as proposed in the initial plot development. The other one was to look into a more reasonable, lower, more affordable, lower cost affordable homes in an area that which I remember the county said was part of not even within the plan of the agreement. And I do remember a smart comment that the mayor said, well, it's still new and you guys can change your plan. When we went into it and agreed that we would go forward with the engineering study, going 2 different ways, part of the memorandum stated that regardless of what direction we went, the $325,000 for the engineering study was not going to be charged back to the city if we decided to go a different route that's not in the next generation housing plan that the county's offering. I don't see that in there unless you guys are twisting some words or there's something in here that I missed when I read through this a couple times in the last week.
So it's in paragraph 6, where it talks about the funds that are dispersed. And it says, "The county agrees that it will not seek to recoup funds from a Next Generation Housing Coalition partner."
It says unless it contracts, and then it says something along the lines of an attachment day, and I looked through our files and I didn't see any attachment days on what the
So-
framework of the Next Generation Housing.
So
meant.
the first, like, two sentences there are basically how the grant is administered. So in other words, we're agreeing that the contract will be administered, so we accept the contract, we're gonna administer it through the county procedures. This isn't them just writing a check for that. We are administering the grant through their processes. That's just saying, once it's approved, we are gonna submit it to them through through the county's grant policy and expenditures, and they have a portal that we're gonna use for the submission. So they have reviewed, and I can have Deb confirm this, but they have reviewed the engineering proposal, and my understanding is contingent upon approval of the memorandum of understanding, those funds are ready to be dispersed through their procedures for disbursement, through dispersal.
Providing we choose the program that fits within the Next Generation Housing, and if we choose a different development scheme on there.
So this is the point that I discussed with the county, and Deb, you can come up here. Which is, the intent here is that the county has reviewed the proposal, they understand what's on the table, they have looked at it, and they've said, yes, we understand this is necessary to move forward with this project. We are approving this. Upon that approval and the disbursement through the grant program, the agreement is they will not seek to recoup those funds from the city at that point. If upon the study, we realize that for whatever reason, this doesn't fit within, the developer or the builders can't fit within the guidelines, we find the need to move from duplexes to triplexes. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that can happen through this process that, as long as this isn't like a bait and switch from us, that it's like, oh, haha, we tricked you into paying the development fees and now we're gonna build, $500,000 homes out there, too bad. That's not the intent. But the intent is that we are able to expend these money without the concern that, oh, we just found out more information and we need to choose a different direction and now the county's coming after us.
Yeah, but I now thought I was in the understanding that the engineering study was gonna bring back the multiple single-family homes and that whole design we got set up for it. But the other part we asked for was to understand that if we decided not to, because I'm not in favor of this, period. And if there's a different development that makes it more economical it's stated in the papers, if you guys had read the papers, what would be more suitable for our building, for our industrial partners in this project, as I would call them. I don't necessarily see that this is the most appropriate use for land, and that's why I asked for two different surveys. So if we go through, decide to put something different in there, then it sounds like we don't apply for the $325,000 grant, correct?
We have applied for the $300,000 grant.
And we received it.
We have received it pending approval of the MOA, correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject,
Pull the microphone right to you. Thank you very much.
The City of Hartford request for the R.A. Smith Engineering was reviewed and approved not only by the Next Gen Housing Committee, but also the County Executive Committee. And the funds were requested to be sent to the city. I assume that the city has received them. And not only did it include the engineering for the Next Gen Housing component, but it also includes the engineering for all of the non-Next Gen Housing as a whole. And it was very transparent in the discussion that I had with the Next Gen Housing Committee as well as the County Executive Committee that it was for the full engineering for the entire site.
Any other questions? Alderperson Garza.
Were those engineering reports showing two different types of development? And what I mean by that is not the multifamily, not the single family, but how Mayor Mahalik wanted the project looked at two different ways. One where it contained single family and multifamily, and then the other where it was majority single family. You know, see how that would work out.
So.
That's kind of where I think Joe Kohler was going at as well.
So I just talked to John Griffin, the city engineer. So there's flexibility within the contract with R.A. Smith, and that discussion about what the options are is something that's going to happen as we get a builder involved. And again, that's something that we would be able to discuss. I mean, this isn't like the decision on what to submit is going to be administratively done. Like, this is, as we get past the, let's just slap some lots on a GIS drawing and get into the actual engineering, there is going to be plans presented to the Common Council under that contract. Again, getting the builder involved is helping to guide the discussion that you want, which is this the best option, you know, to fit within this direct framework, or is there some other option that the builder is saying, no, we should be doing this to get the homes that we think are being requested here? And I'm not sure specifically what, I mean, I guess I wasn't here for the approval of, or the vote on that, but
No, you answered my question, it's very clear. I think we're at a crossroads right now that if, it sounds like we need to sign the letter of memorandum so that we can get the $330,000.
Yes.
I'll tell you right now, I won't sign the letter of memorandum because I don't believe that this is the direction we need to go following the process. So it's kind of like, we can get the $325,000, whatever the cost is for that, knowing that I'm not for moving forward with that program. So to me, it's kind of telling the county, hey, you paid for it, but we're in this direction we're going to go. So I feel that we're kind of tied, that if we go forward with signing this memorandum, getting the money in, and if that's not really the intent that we plan on going, which is not my intent going forward, I don't think that that's the right thing to do. It's a wrong message to send. Yep. And I think we need, as a city, decide, again, I mentioned it many times and it's stated in the paper, we really need to look at how we want to develop a lot of our neighborhoods in the opens the ones that we have. It is exciting that we have builders that want to build homes. There's also other areas that these builders can build homes. So again, I guess I'm just going to tell everybody that I think moving forward on something like this is not the direction the city should be going into. We have other options, and I think as a city we should look at that. If we miss the window of opportunity, then maybe down the road we'd like to do this with the county, then we miss that opportunity. But in the long run, not 5 years from now, not a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years now, 15 years from now, what does that look like? What does that mean? And we have to think about that as this council, because you guys are we're drawing some pretty hardcore permanent structure that we're not going to be able to remove. So think about what we're putting into in a decision. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you putting the memorandum together. I completely understand it. And I'd be lying if I voted for it.
Yep. Alderperson Turkey?
Yeah, and just kind of to echo some of the comments that have been made, as I recall, and I still have a good memory, we had the discussion, and Alderman Garza brought it up as well, is that we were looking for two different options on the engineering study, and that's what we went back to see if the county would be okay with that. So the conversation of it's going to be kind of up to the builder was not, I believe, the intent of the council during the conversation we had that night. I know it was a tight vote. I believe it was 5-4, and I believe it got passed, in my opinion, because we had these two options. Now it doesn't sound like we have two options. That's the way I'm interpreting at this moment. So I'll echo the conversations and some of the statements that were made by some of the council members there. So that's my opinion.
Just to correct something you said, we do have options.
Yeah.
R.A. Smith will do options that, again, reflect what the council has requested the last meeting.
Correct. Yeah, RA Smith
So-
is going to provide
This-
options.
And this memorandum of agreement basically allows you the flexibility to have those.
No, we asked for two distinct options, I believe, during the debate that we had during the council meeting. Now, is that what's going to happen or not going to happen? Because if it's going to happen, it sure hasn't been clear in my mind tonight that that's going to happen. So please clarify exactly what the engineering studies are going to do.
John Griffin, city engineer. Alderman Turchi, it's a great question because we have a draft contract for the mayor's signature for R.A. Smith, and a 30% milestone in about July is when they have to develop those plans with the alternatives. We haven't paid anybody to do anything yet in that regard, but part of this, at the 30% stage, we will bring to you the alternative, maybe at least one alternative, and maybe more. But we wanted to get the builder's input too, to say, yeah, guys, that will work, or no, we're gonna need to do more duplexes, et cetera. So that's what we want to give you something that's realistic as an alternative, not just something that somebody invented on a piece of paper. And so that's where we're at. That 30% of the progress of the engineering contract in July is when that would be occurring, where we get to sit down and look at those. Thank you.
Alderperson Phillip?
So let me understand what John just said then. So I guess I agree with Joe's point that if he doesn't want to go with the whole project, then this is a waste of his time with respect to moving forward. But I'd like to understand, like I talked to Ian earlier, is, hey, what's our next phase gate or point to be able to answer Turchi's question, as well as this model of what's going to work and what's not going to work in that space financially? Because I don't think we need to burn the entire $320K to get to that point. Am I right?
Correct. That's the 30% point that.
So you're saying, hey, you know what, we approve this, and then we come back, we've done $100K for the study, and then from that, we can have a conversation as to whether the mix is right,
Correct.
whether the mix works, and whether the mix actually supports the NGH initiative.
Correct. And whether.
Or we modify the NGH initiative to be able to meet that modification, so we take advantage of the 2.5 million. Am I understanding that right?
Correct. I mean, the 2.5 million, but also the entire.
Yeah, I know, it's a
entire
10 million
space out
invest,
there.
I get the overall for the city.
Yeah, correct. Like, this is a piece of the entire project, because there's also the multifamily out there, that's, this is a true mixed-use development, across the spectrum, residential and, other uses. So it's not, some industrial, commercial with all single-family. It's a broad mix of uses to try and get to that affordable housing goal.
Any other questions? Alderperson Savage?
My question is, why won't a private developer take this on?
So I think there's a couple factors with this specific project. One is this is a cooperative project with the Hartford Area Development Corporation, who the city holds the land, but this is their land out there. So they would not develop this as a residential development but for this specific goal, right? So this specific land is not going to be open to somebody to come in and develop a traditional subdivision like a Borland Farms or something. This is the only reason this is even on the table as a residential development is because this is fulfilling goals of our industrial, of the businesses and the industrial businesses out in the industrial park to provide housing for their employees. So that's the reason this is on the table. So if this goes off the table, then, that land goes off the table for residential development likely.
And to follow up, two pieces to this. One is that obviously an individual private developer is going to want as much money to make as humanly possible. This isn't one of those deals. This is a deal in which only somebody who's looking to accomplish a goal is going to get involved in it, because as we heard from the developers and the builders, Why would I build a $300,000 house when I can build a $600,000 house in the same amount of time and make a lot more money? And so that's what we found. That's why that we are getting involved with this. Same situation with Jackson. Jackson owned the property in which they're involved in right now, and they just cut the ribbon on it that the mayor attended last week or the week before. Whereas in Slinger, they had a private developer involved in it, and it just simply wasn't going to happen because the private developer, again, is going to look to take his property and make as much money as humanly possible out of it. And so that's why we have to get involved. Any other questions? Alderperson Webb, I can't see you, so I don't know if you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I just have one quick statement. I'm going to support this. We got a letter from businesses saying that they need this, and that's my only comment.
Any other questions? Is he still looking for something? Oh, okay, he's done?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't hear him from out there. If not, back to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we're looking again, I'll read it all out as the discussion and consideration of Washington County Next Generation Housing Fund Memorandum of Agreement, so an MOA, between the following parties, Washington County and the City of Hartford and the Hartford Area Development Corporation. There was, of course, an executive summary attached. We've had full discussion and would look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Alderperson Webb, second by Alderperson Carroll.
Motion by Alderperson Webb and seconded by Alderperson Carroll, approving the Washington County Next Generation Housing Fund Memorandum of Agreement between the following parties, Washington County, the City of Hartford, and the Hartford Area Development Corporation.
Thank you. I'm going to request, we're going to put a challenge to our upcoming new city clerk and ask for a roll call vote.
Kohler,
Nay.
Rusniak,
Aye.
Fulop,
Nay.
Garza,
Nay.
Savage,
Nay.
Turchi, Nay.
Reagan,
Aye.
Carroll,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
That's 5-4
so
against.
there was 4 yeses and 5 noes.
Next item.
Next item on the agenda will be the site assessment grant agreement between the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and the City of Hartford. Our city engineer, John Griffin, is here to bring forward the proposal.
Good evening again. Oh, there we go. This is for the 28 South Main properties, 24, 26, and 28. It's currently the parking lot south of the poorhouse. It's a contaminated site that the city owns, used to be a dry cleaner. And the current forecast is somewhere between $180,000 to $200,000 worth of environmental investigation and planning to remediate the site. We've found a great partner in Washington County, and we have an opportunity today to leverage $10,000 of unobligated city funds to get that $200,000 grant from Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to move forward the investigation and the future, bring to closure that site so that it could be sold or redeveloped in the future.
Any questions? Alderperson
So we put up
Rusniak.
$10,000 and the rest of it is the WEDC grant?
And the Washington County Site Remediation Committee.
Looks like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
I'll move to approve.
Any other questions before we go on to a vote? Alderperson Savage?
Will the lot remain a parking lot?
For the time being, until we complete the investigation, part of that investigation will be develop a closure plan for the site, either cleanup of some sort. It will take several years, I'm assuming, maybe 3-4 years to get it to the point where we can finally put it on, up for sale or another city development.
Any other questions, Alderperson Fulop?
So this site, you've already done the boring from your analysis, right?
Yes.
And I'm assuming it's going to need long-term DNR monitoring even after, or are we confident in the fact that we can actually remediate this site rather than just mitigate?
That's what the study will eventually show us. The previous study that was completed last year told us that, yes, the contamination is moving off-site toward Hanks, toward the intersection of Sumner and Main Street. And it also told us that the contamination is in the bedrock. So the new study will get into the bedrock, see how far that's gone, do some additional borings on Sumner, in the sidewalk areas along Sumner, east and west of Main. We'll be doing sub-slab monitoring of vapors. We know that the poorhouse will also need essentially a radon mitigation system that will remove those vapors from beneath the basement slab and vent them out of the building, and the grant will pay for that installation as well.
So that's the reason for the 200K. This is spread quite far and has, okay. I was just trying to get my arms around the cost on it.
Yeah.
Just at the location alone isn't a big deal, but you're saying it's spread beyond that, and we got to see how far it goes.
And now we have to drill into bedrock,
Yeah,
which gets really
yeah.
expensive.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderperson Webb, I can't see you, so you have to tell me if you like to say something.
No, I'm good.
Thank you. If nothing else, back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would look for a motion to approve.
Already made that.
Okay.
For a second.
Yeah, that's, okay, we have Alderperson Rusniak, second by Alderperson Reagan.
Motion by Alderperson Rusniak, seconded by Alderperson Reagan, authorizing the mayor to execute the site assessment grant agreement between the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and the City of Hartford for investigation and remedial planning for the 24 through 28 South Main Street properties.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Steve?
Just to let you know that, again, that'll be ready for your signature like early next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And last item, the fourth quarter general fund unaudited results. Every quarter, we
Are you
come.
going to do the approval of appointment?
Oh,
Yeah, see, you got mayor's disease.
You say he's been hanging around you for a while.
And that's something you can't get rid of.
item number C, discussion consideration of approval of
Number C.
appointment to the new Director of Community Development per the recommendation of the hiring committee. The hiring committee met on, that would have been Thursday, and reviewed 3 applicants for interview. A total of, we received probably about 20 different applications. Those that went the full distance of sending us all the following backup and doing the background check and everything else, we got down to 4. 3 individuals accepted the interview. We did the interviews on Thursday afternoon, and the committee reviewed those 3 and made the recommendation to make the offer to Jacob Moss. And the recommendation to the council is to approve Jacob Moss to start as the new Director of Development. His first day would be June 5th.
Give him a little background, Steve, on Jacob.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so Jacob is I'm going to say this very, he's currently a planner for a community south of us. I don't know that he's given his resignation yet, so I'm just trying to And prior to that, he worked for another community to the southwest of us, at which he worked with two of our employees who currently work here. And so he has a lot of experience, a lot of great experience. We feel not only does he have a great deal of knowledge in plan review, planning, project review, but also we feel he's going to be a great fit for the organization, which is very key to us to have a long-term employee. The community in which he was prior to the current community, he was there for over 10 years, so we feel, I get very confident this is going to be a long-term employee for us. Just as a reminder, our previous development director was with us for 21 years. So we have a history of having very long-term committed employees. So that is our recommendation.
Move to approve.
Well, any questions?
Yeah, any other questions? Alderperson Webb?
No questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, back to you, Mayor.
That's what I was waiting for. Okay, we have a motion to approve.
The appointment.
Okay. Second by Alderperson Webb.
Really?
Oh, Carol Webb.
Carol Webb.
Motion by Alderperson Carroll, seconded by Alderperson Webb, approving the appointment of Jacob Moss as the new City Director of Community Development per the recommendation of the hiring committee.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All. Motion carried. Okay.
Fourth and
Steve.
final item is our fourth quarter general fund unaudited results. Again, we always remind you that this one is unaudited. There are some transfers that might take place between now and the time you review your audit, which won't happen until July. But anyways, you received the general information, which showed the city was, at the end of 2022, was at 97.13% for the total general fund revenues at the end of the prior year fourth quarter. This was lower than the prior 6 years due to the miscalculation on expected revenues from the pilot. From the utilities, we have figured out how the calculation went wrong as far as what the pilot would be. This was corrected in 2023 budget, so we should not have this issue again. That difference was $250,000. If we had been added in the budget as we expected it to when we originally did the budget for 2022, we would have been in the 98 to 101%, which is what the range has been for the last 6 years. As far as the expenses for the prior year, fourth quarter where total was 100.55%. We're very close to what budgeted. Of the budget, the budget was a little higher than our most recent range, primarily due to spending $233,000 on unexpected and unbudgeted funds for the new fire station property. So had we not done that, again, it was an opportunity purchase, we would have been at 95 to 98%, which is the range for the budget for the last 6 years. In total, the city budget was projected to pull $252,000 from the fund balance for normal operations, which is primarily retirement payouts. However, with the loss of expected revenues and overages of expenses are outlined above, we ended up pulling $375,000 from the fund balance for 2022. This is again a decrease to that fund balance of $123,000. Again, each department head is made aware of any overages and expenses or shortfalls in revenues that makes the finance administrator take notice, and we are reviewing those for any explanations. A lot of the things too we have talked with the staff members who again had those overages in expenses or lower revenues than expected. And again, some of these, most of those have been corrected for the 2023 budget, which made the 2023 budget a little tougher. But again, we should be back on track for 2023. Any questions about the financials? Again, for the new members, we do this every quarter for the purpose of reviewing where we're at. If there's a huge red flag that we should know about, This is how you find out when I'm embezzling, so that's the nice thing. That was a joke, by the way.
They go over like mine.
Tough crowd. Any other questions? If not, that is the end of my report.
Okay, for adjournment. Alderperson Savage, second by Alderperson Carroll. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No, we stand adjourned.